Woke up angry this morning because the realization about our country has really hit me like a ton of bricks. And what I mean by this is, here we are wanting to blame politicians for everything. We want to blame the politicians for the reasons that our cities are crumbling, the reasons why we have so much breakdown of our culture and civilization. But in the reality, we are the ones who let it happen. We can't blame it on the boomers. We can't blame it on anybody else. We all have a part in it, and we all have to own up to our responsibility in the matter, instead of going in this culture that says, oh, it's not my fault, I didn't do it, somebody else did. And that's not acceptable anymore. It's really not, because when you continuously pass the buck, then the problems never get solved. And so here we are, we're in such an interesting situation, because people act like, oh, it's the election does this, the election does that. The election does nothing except allow us to pass the buck again. Oh, it's Trump's fault. Oh, it's Bernie's fault. Oh, it's this person's fault. But none of you, even myself, we have not taken a moment to look in the mirror to see how we contributed to these problems. How we have not looked in the mirror to see what we could do to solve these problems. There's a homeless crisis in California, and yet you want to blame the daggum politicians in charge, but have any one of you let a homeless person into your house? Have any one of you cracked your wallet to help a homeless person out? Granted, there are organizations that do things, but when you say it's not my responsibility, then what is your responsibility? Let's think about this. And then we allow our children to go to these public institutions of teaching. Yeah, the public schools are one of the biggest problems, because what are they teaching our children? They're not teaching them adequate history, because they're teaching them what's bad is good and good is bad. And that's even happening in the science classes, where we have things like abortion being taught as acceptable, okay, and if not even promoted, so that way you don't have to deal with your own consequences of having unprotected sex at an early age. This is just gone on too long, because we are not holding ourselves accountable. And then we have all these little talk shows, talking heads and all this, who want to say, well, it's this and that. And yet, yeah, there are grand powers at play that promote propaganda. But what are you going to do? I know my camera's shaking, but I live on a dirt road. Deal with it. But we have all this propaganda coming. But why are we eating the propaganda? Why are we just ladling the gravy, but we're not getting any meat? We're not getting any sustenance. It's because we're ignoring the people who have been shouting from the rooftops for a long time. We've been making fun of the people that's been like, you know what? Vaccines are dangerous. We should really look into them, because it's all there on the insert. You know, politicians really don't have anybody's interest but their own in mind, and so that way voting's kind of a scam at a federal level, but yet you can take charge in your local communities by banding together and changing the things. Like with your local school boards, talking back on the public school system, if you get involved with your school boards, you can stop the terrible things that are going into our children's head. From the early and earlier sex education, seriously, if you take a look at how many states are letting children be taught sex education in kindergarten and around then, or even in elementary school, that's all plumbing. It has nothing to do. And then they want to teach perversions like it's beneficial. Come on. Sex is, the primary function is to procreate. And then we're having these propaganding things such as your Disneys, your everything else on TV, hypersexualizing children at an early age so that way they can push their crazy, nasty agendas. And at the end of the day, everything in life is a choice. You choose what you do. You can't do this garbage. Oh, I was born this way. No, you're making active choices to be that way. Let me repeat. Everything in life is a choice. You are making choices to rather ignore, to go on with it, or you're making choices to actively participate. Choosing to do nothing is a choice. Choosing to turn your head and ignore the problem is a choice. But apparently, if you speak out against the problem, you're the person who's causing all the problems because you're just not going along to get along. So we have lots and lots of problems here that we are not addressing because we want to shift the buck to somebody else. Quite frankly, I'm tired of it. I'm disappointed in myself because I went along with it. I'm also highly disappointed in Americans because we all went along with it. You know what? You pay more attention to sports, to reality shows, to garbage on television than we do our own families. Prove me wrong on this one. We send our children off to school for what? 8 to 10 hours a day to be taught by somebody you don't know on topics that you don't even ask them about. You don't even challenge them on what they've learned, but instead you don't even really want to be around your own children, so you put them into other activities because a lot of times you can't stand your own children because of the level of responsibility it takes to interact with your children. Let's look at our society and prove me I'm wrong on that. There is so much that we can change this society with if we start looking in our mirrors, critiquing ourselves, and saying, okay, I am doing this wrong. What can I do to be better? We don't need to follow people that say, oh, well, I've got the gravy. Oh, or the people that are trying to sell you the pills that cure all because they're going to do the despair merchant thing and say, oh, this is going to happen unless you buy our pills, or, you know, or the promosexuals that just do nothing but promote all sorts of advertisements all day long and then tell you how they're smarter because they're beating up on people who are not been actually taught anything. This has just gotten out of hand, and seriously, as a society, we need to change ourselves to improve this society. We can't say, oh, well, the climate, we're all gonna die. If you've had any education at all, or indoctrination for that matter, you do realize the plant cycle needs CO2, and increased CO2 will increase plant life, which in turn produces more oxygen. People need to stop buying into this fear-mongering because it's like we've been so conditioned with TV and everything to keep us entertained, lulled to sleep, letting politicians tickle our ears so that way we don't have to be responsible and accountable. I know this is a long rant, but I'm tired. I'm tired of people treating each other bad because, oh, you're not wearing the same type of clothes, or you're not doing this the way I want you to. There's a level that you can bring a bit of tolerance and kindness into things, but still stand your ground. You do not have to accept what other people do, and you can point out the fouls of their logic. You can point out the logical errors. It is not. My battery's done. It's not bad to say, hey, you know, constantly lying to people is bad. Hey, murdering children is bad, and we shouldn't do it. That's not a bad thing to say or do. But when you start getting on this bandwagon of yelling at people, calling them stupid and things like that, who's being the problem then? Pointing out a problem and belittling somebody for doing the problem are two totally different things. It's just like you don't want to, you can warn somebody, it's like, hey, that's an electrical outlet and you don't want to put that fork in it. But instead of saying, hey, you're a retard for putting your fork in an outlet, what do you expect? Come on. There are ways we can warn people and help people see the fouls in their actions, to see the errors in their actions. But instead, no, we want to get on this uppity thing. We want to do backbiting. We want to do this crazy tribalism, even in churches. Like, oh, well, then, Susie didn't wear the right shoes to church, or they didn't pray right. It's everywhere. And we're taught to turn on each other. Even from an early age, you have people doing bad parenting, turning people on one another so that their whole lives, they are not being good to one another because of, oh, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. What gives, people? We have to start earning it. We have to start being better. And granted, there's some things that are out of our control, but I promise you, there's more that's in our control than you care to realize. It's just, are you willing to stand up and to take control of yourself and to be a better person that it doesn't submit their power to government, to any other institute, and start thinking and acting for yourself? That's my rant. I'm out.